Why do you coach? Welcome to the Nick Anthony Show. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Nick.
Hey, Nick, how you doing today?
I'm all right. I had a tough commute today.
Oh, no, what happened?
Come from the city, Anth. You know, traffic on the Schuylkill Expressway in Philly isn't easy to get out here to rip roaring studios. So
It's so unpredictable.
It is. But we're here. I'm here.
Good. All right, that's good.
Yeah. So we're talking goal setting today.
We are. I think you want to start telling
Yeah,
your
I
stories?
do. So I think a lot of times these things come out better in stories, right? So we talked a little bit before in a previous episode about you helping me and how we met, but we didn't talk about some of the results that came out of that. We touched upon it with the introducing PKE, but we did not talk about kind of the project that we worked on. And the project we wound up working on was this thing we codenamed Halo, which you obviously know and are very familiar with, but how we got there and what it meant and the procedure. And we'll talk a lot about goal setting, but I think for me at Drexel in my job, it wasn't easy, although it seems really obvious. The goal was to get to win in men's basketball, to get to the NCAA tournament. And what we wound up doing, you kind of poked around and asked me a lot of things, but the idea of Halo was that by winning in men's basketball, getting to an NCAA tournament, what that would do in terms of a halo effect on the university, on our department, et cetera. And within that, I think what you taught me in that whole project and procedure was a bunch of different things. But one major thing that I think is such a good example of setting a goal and then how you work within that goal was the decisions that it drove. And I'm using kind of the phrases you've given me over time, but the decisions that we made that drove, that were driven by Halo and the goal. And one in particular, I will say, is we were going through a major search in women's lacrosse at the time, and hiring that coach and making the decision with Halo in mind. I remember you asking the question to me, which was, when you're evaluating candidates, what is going to allow you to focus on Halo? And that really helped me clear up what I was thinking and what we were doing. As it turns out, I think we would have been great with a bunch of different candidates, well, two specifically, but the one we hired was absolute home run, allowed me 100% to focus on Halo. A few years later, we're in the NCAA tournament. So not only did we get to the NCAA tournament in men's basketball, but we got there in women's basketball and a few of our other sports in the same year. So the Halo effect really came to fruition, and the goal was to get to the NCAA tournament men's basketball within 4 years. We did put a time frame on it. I'm not the coach, so there's a lot more things that go on, and so I don't want to pretend that I got us to the NCAA tournament, but I will take credit that it really honed a lot of decisions and actions that probably would have been distracted by different factors where the clear goal allowed me to focus on it. So
Right.
I'll let you comment on your role on that and how you helped me.
Well, but it's a classic example of the old Chinese proverb, and that is you can't chase two rabbits. You don't catch, I can't remember the exact words, but if you chase two rabbits, you're not going to catch either one.
Yeah.
Right? And so what you did is you decided, I didn't decide, right? I had nothing to do with the decision, but you decided, like, if I do this, it's going to be good for everyone. Mm-hmm. Whereas in so many organizations, business, sports, whatever, right? People are trying to do a bunch of things at the same time, and they end up not doing anything really well. So it's like steps. And so for you, it wasn't just, and I know you just said this, so I'm repeating it a little bit, it wasn't just like men's basketball. Mm-hmm. You thought, and you believe, and it is true, that if men's basketball did well, then it would help the other sports do well, and so it would help the whole athletic department, and then that would help the whole university, and then that would help the whole student body community, right? And so, but if you had just said, well, we're going to go focus on the student body community first, and we're going to have all our athletes spend, all their time doing social things, right? It wouldn't have had such an impactful thing, because while you were doing that, you were trying to win games.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? So you would have just been spread too thin. So once you define what the goal is, right? And then it helps drive all your decisions. It helps drive all communications. It helps drive all priorities. And it really helps drive the identity of whatever group you're working with.
Yeah, and that was probably pretty clear with us, right? I mean, the identity of an athletic department is at a school that does not have football, right, and big time football.
Right.
You so much of the focus is on men's basketball, which rightfully so. And the halo effect, it wouldn't just be at my school. It would be the same in other places. But again, identifying that brand, we wanted to be a brand that was an NCAA tournament basketball school. That's going to rise our lacrosse programs, our soccer programs, and the rest of them. It has that effect. And not on top of that, the amount of resources that go into basketball, because you have to compete, is significant. So it seems like rocket, like very simple, but really, I think in sports often it's, we want to win a championship, right? And I did say that, but there's so much behind that that's deeper. And I think within sports, and again in particular, they just wind up chasing things. It's just like, chasing winning, but what goes into that, the decisions behind it,
right,
and the clarity of those, and then also, is the goal big enough, right? And I'd want to hear from you a little bit. How big a goal do you make? I mean, that was a big goal for us. We hadn't been there in 25 years. But is that, was that a big enough goal? Was that aspirational or not enough?
I think that only you or the organization can really decide what the goal is, right? And spending time on it. And goal setting sounds easy, but if you think it's easy, then you're not doing it right, right? I mean, we spent, as much as you summarized it very quickly, we spent hours, days, weeks really defining all the tenets of Halo and how it would impact other people and whether it was good or bad and all that kind of stuff. We spent a lot of time doing that. But you see it as a problem everywhere from youth sports to pro sports, where the goal is not really always clear. You think that it is, right? But if you look at, I don't know, let's look at the Pittsburgh Pirates right now and the Philadelphia Phillies, right? They're both playing baseball. You would think both of their goals are to win the World Series, but is that true? You can't look at the Pirates and think they're really trying to win the World Series or even be a perennial contender like the Phillies are, right? So they have their goals. I'm not sure exactly what they are, and I'm not being critical of the Pirates, right? They're a successful franchise historically, but it's very different. So you can't just assume that just because you're doing this, that the goal is to win a championship. It might be being competitive in your division for the next few years. It might be whatever it is, right? And in youth sports, it happens all the time. My daughter plays water polo, right? And we were in a tournament a couple weeks ago, and the head coach wasn't there, and one of our best players, and so the head coach wasn't there, and so a different coach kind of came in and coached that game, and one of our better players sat on the bench the whole third quarter. And it just didn't make sense to the people in the stands. And one woman in particular was just like, because we have a trip coming up to Texas to play in a travel thing, right? And it was a Junior Olympics kind of thing.
Which is a whole other topic.
Except that when that game was over, this mother was so mad. She goes, I'm not spending my time, I'm not spending my money, I'm not doing all that if we're not playing to win. Well, that's understandable, right? But if we had known, right, the goal is, everybody plays, right? Like a lot of youth sports are Everybody plays, everybody's learning, right? That's
So what,
okay,
good.
right?
That. Yep.
But then if you're a travel team, does that change, right? And I think the coach has to be really clear to everybody all the time how decisions are being made in game. So you don't, not in game, but not just in game, but per throughout the season.
Yeah.
Right. And then in the tournaments, all that kind of stuff. Or you can even go to one tournament and say, you're like, in this tournament, it doesn't matter. So everybody's playing. We want to make sure everybody gets playing experience. But when we go here, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, when it comes to youth sports, especially clubs, what is the goal? And is it clearly stated? Right. I don't, because I think there is an argument, about that. Not an argument, but there wouldn't be an argument if the coach had just said, this is what this is the goal.
Yeah, when
the
you
goal is to develop
Right.
these, young girls into better water polo, give them a great experience, and try to win games at the same time. But there's a priority, and the pecking order is
Right.
is at the top, that we're going to play everyone.
Right.
And I actually think a lot of that goal setting, and when you're talking about coaches and us helping coaches with this, is be clear with it, be clear, right, precise with your goal, but also give it clarity for your audience. And in youth sports, a lot of the audience is not just the kids, it's the parents.
Oh,
and setting those expectations,
absolutely.
right? And I think that, I've talked to a number of my friends or coworkers or whatever who are parents, and you can see it. You can see the frustration. And to me, I would contend that the frustration is, it's just they don't know the goal. They
Right.
have a goal, and
Right.
they may not agree with it.
Right.
They may not agree with the coach, but they actually don't even know what the coach's goal is.
Right.
And I think coaches out there, club, youth, they really need to set the goal so that parents in particular understand what they're dealing with.
Right, absolutely, and if they don't, it just leads to conflict. And I contend it's the same thing at every level of sports, right? And college and high school and everything. It's not, you can't just say we're all about winning, right? Because if you are just only about winning, if that's your only goal, as I just want to win as many games as I can, then where do ethics fall into that, for example? What rules are you willing to break? Right? We know about Spygate and Deflategate and Bountygate, and we know about all these other things that happen in professional sports. Well, in today's world, there's a lot of pressure on high school coaches, right? I know one that was just fired at the end of last season because he wasn't winning enough, right? Or they said he wasn't winning enough, right? And that was a high school sport kind of thing. And I know that's really common nowadays, but that's pressure.
Well, yeah, I think it is pressure. I think it's also, coming from an administrative side to the coaches, somebody has to be clear with that. Is that an expectation?
Right.
And then working with, together with the coach and whoever the boss is, whether that's the organization or whether that's a university or et cetera, is what is the goal above them, right? Because they need to know that, and that could drive what their goals, how they set their goals. If you're a club's team and you want to be the number one club in performance, you may not have a choice of what are you prioritizing over playing time or winning, right? If it's dictated above you. So I think coaches out there need to be in sync with whoever their quote unquote bosses are.
Right. And even with a particular club, it can change based on age, right? And team and level of team and all that kind of stuff. But again, to your point, right? Just being really clear on all that is critical, right? Because you just create conflict and angst and everything. So going back to your college, high school thing, right? If you're the person in charge of the athletic department, whether it's an AD or not, and your coach, you need to sit down and talk. That's part of what I mean by it's hard, right? You can't just assume the goal is to win as many games as you can, and your boss is going to know that it's realistic this year. You're going to be 5-15, right? That might be a great season. Really, could be a great season if you have all like freshmen and sophomores that you're playing, or you have just like a team that you're trying to develop, and everybody's in sync and everybody understands it's a development year. So you're playing that freshman more because he or she has more potential than somebody else, and you're trying to get to a point to where 3 years from now, you want to be really competitive, right? So talking about all that kind of stuff, putting all that on the table, looking at the bigger picture and talking about those things is just really, really critical.
Can we go back to your point with
Yeah.
the kind of setting? What are you willing to ethics? That kind of conversation, and what rules are you willing to bend or break? And then just how that relates into in sports, you hear a lot about setting the culture, setting the standards, etc. But and I have a few examples, but I want to hear what kind of how you see that part of it working within a decision. Or in goal setting.
So this is So I swear, Nick, I'm not going to bring up marathon swimming in every show. I promise you. Okay, but I have a great example of when you say you're going to go swim the English Channel. Mm-hmm. Okay, there are rules behind that. People just think, oh, you just go swim it. No.
They do.
No, it's
just
not.
Told somebody the story the other day, and they were like, "What do you mean?
Yeah,
what do you mean he didn't finish?" And then he came back later and finished it. Why didn't he finish? And I said, "Well, he actually felt better the first time than he did the second time."
Right. That's another story for another day, and all. But there are rules. There's referees on the boat. There's all they're called observers in that sport and all that kind of stuff, right? But there's rules. And you have to follow the rules. It's no wetsuit. It's no touching. Like if we were to brush hands, or if you hand me a water bottle, I get disqualified as a swimmer because that's a heat transfer. But all that's laid out in pages and pages of rules. There's even a half a page of rules you have to follow just to do the qualifying swim. You have to do a 6-hour qualifying swim in 60-degree water to get a chance to do the English Channel. If you don't do that, you don't even get a chance to try, right? Because there's so many limited spots. But my point is that so when I picked swimming the English Channel, I didn't even know all the rules, but I had to learn all the rules. So when I talk to somebody, I can say, because there's 2 associations that ratify swims, they have permission from both Coast Guards. I won't get too much detail, but I just say, which association did you go with? And if they say, oh, I didn't go with either one of them, then I know they didn't really swim the English Channel, right? They maybe wore a wetsuit, they maybe, kayaked half the, I don't know, right? But who really knows? But I know if you did one of those 2 associations, you followed the rules, right? So for most people, though, when they set a goal, they don't have somebody else dictating the rules. Mm-hmm. They have rules within the game, right? But you don't set your own self-imposed rules about what are you willing to do to accomplish your goal.
Yep.
And I would contend things like the New Orleans Bounty Gate, which for people who don't know, right, they got in big trouble because they were giving people bonuses for basically knocking other players from the other team out of the game, right? And well, I guess that wasn't a rule in there. I guess, I don't know. I mean, it was a rule or not. It should have been a rule, a self-imposed rule, is my contention. And if you say all I care about is winning, that's how people get in trouble. And it's not just sports, and it's in every part of their life. They just get in trouble if they're so focused on their goal that they forget who they are, and then they lose their family, they lose whatever because they're just crazy driving for a goal.
I would bring it into like college coaches that are listening. I work with plenty of coaches who make a short-term mistake because of winning, right? Because they didn't set a rule on themselves that we're not going to have bad character,
right?
Low emotional skills, certain emotional skills, and then that hurts the short term, which there was a short term potential gain, but what it did was actually hurt the short term and the long term. Right. So it puts the program back because you didn't set the rule, you didn't make the rules when you set the goal, and the goal was to win a conference championship or whatever, but made the bad mistake, and there's a seduction in recruiting in college where you see the talent, you see bigger, stronger, faster. We talked about it a little bit with PKE, but you can also see it when you break your own rules and or if you haven't set them. I mean, if you did set them. So I think that part is huge in. Again, coaches talk a lot about standards and the standards within the program. Right. And then, okay, well, what happens when that standard is broken by your star quarterback or et cetera? Are you still keeping your standards? Right. The goal is still the same, right? But what are you willing to do with it? And I would say that the most successful organizations, programs, and are made by programmatic decisions, right? You're making, the Eagles are a great example.
Yep.
The Eagles have stated that they want to be a championship contender, a highly competitive playoff team. That's their goal consistently across the board. Yes, of course they want to win a Super Bowl. Of course they want to do that every year, but they're not going to do it at the cost of driving the organization down, which other organizations have. Right. Now the Eagles have won 2 in whatever the last however long, but they've remained competitive to do it. So they're always prepared to win it. And to me, in professional sports, you always have to be prepared. It's professional sports. I mean, the worst team isn't as they're still pros. Right. But I think the Eagles have set that standard, and within that, they've set their own rules. That they're not going to do. They don't publish them all, but they have rules on how they build their organization, how they build that team each year that they stick to when they've set the goal.
Right. And I don't think it's so. I think a flip example of that is maybe the LA Rams when they won the Super Bowl a few years ago. They put all the chips in that year, or whatever that phrase is, right? They put it all on the table, right, for that year, and it paid off for them. And then they came back last year, and they were in the playoffs last year, and they ran the Eagles close. But they put everything in, and then they were bad for a few years. That's not wrong, right? It's not wrong, but it's just part of who your identity is. So that's why the goal setting is so critical. It's like everybody from the GM to the coaches to the players, everybody has to know this is our shot. We're shooting this year, right? So, I don't know what all the little decisions that were made all downstream, but it was clear from the outside that's what they were doing that year. So everybody was making decisions for the short term for that year.
We'll be right back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Today's show is brought to you by the free film available on YouTube, A Dream Plus a Plan. Learn what it takes to accomplish your dream, whatever your dream is. Go to www.adreamplusaplan.com. adreamplusaplan.com.
Welcome back to the Nick Anthony Show.
We've gone around a little bit, but I'll go back to just coaches, and I do think coaches in general struggle with the whole process of setting a goal, and not because it's so to them it's so obvious. We're to win, right? To win, and I'm going to go. I'll say high school and up, maybe with that statement. Is they want to win. They want to win a conference championship. They want to win a state championship or an NCAA championship or whatever it is, and that becomes the goal. But if you just kind of keep it at that level, I don't think you really start going through the process of what does that mean? Is the setting of the maybe even smaller goals and that are going to attain the measurables, I guess, that are going to show you if you're getting there. And so I would ask you a little bit in your experience with business, and how do you relate that? How do you relate that you want to be the most profitable company or whatever in X, right? But there was so many different goals in between that. So what can we help coaches with, I guess, in relation to that process? So
you brought up business, and so you're right. Businesses are absolutely under pressure, especially publicly traded businesses or their investors are clamoring for results, right? Even privately held companies, but they're quarterly driven, all the publicly traded companies. So they're under pressure all the time to hit that number, and if they don't hit that number, they have a story that keeps their stock, all that. They're just under constant pressure all the time. Well, it would be really easy to hit your profitability numbers by just firing everybody, right? Get rid of all your expenses, keep the revenue coming in for one quarter, and then you look great for that one quarter, and then it's disaster, right? So when I work with companies, when we do goal setting, right, I'm telling you, it's hard, right? I sit down and I give everybody notebooks, and we can take up to 2 to 3 weeks just writing down all the things that are important to us. I still want to have a good relationship with my spouse. I still want, all those kinds of things. They sound silly and maybe in this little conversation right here, but they're important for the long term, right? So that you are really building a healthy environment. You're really building a healthy company that's going to sustain in the long run, right? What do I want to do for my customers? What do I want to do for my employees? What do I want to do for my financial investors, right? What's my financial return for those people? So it's all those people need to be satisfied to run a healthy business. I contend it's the same thing for any team, even a youth team, right? To your point earlier, right? it's not just the kids that need to be getting something out of it. The parents actually have to be in sync, right? And then if you're a youth sport coach, you have to be happy, right? Because you're a lot of times it's your friends' kids that you're coaching. So you have to, this is a tool to communicate to them. Look, this is what we're doing this year. If you don't like it, I'm okay. I'll help you go find another team or whatever. But you're communicating. You're keeping your friendship, right? If you're a high school coach or whatever, right? You sit down and you talk to your goal about the goals, and you make sure you're in sync with your bosses. We talked about that too. So it's hard work, but I would sit down. If I'm a coach today, I'm getting a notebook, and I am just like over the next couple of weeks, I am just writing in that notebook whenever carrying it with me everywhere I go. Just a little notebook, and just like anytime I think of something like that's important to me, that's important to me, that's important to me, I'm writing those things down.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that leads to, again, I'm going to go back to, again, any sport. Once you have a goal, then you know where everybody fits. Youth sports, pro sports, right? You know where everybody's supposed to fit on your team. And then you can figure out how to coach that player, right? Like maybe this player needs to work on their dribbling to be the best contributor to the team. Maybe it's just all about just education. So I want to make sure before the season's over, my goal for this team is everybody can dribble with their left hand. Right, and I'm just making that up, right?
Course.
You're the basketball guy, but whatever. Maybe they dribble with either hand or whatever, right? Every kid can do a layup, whatever, right? If that's your goal for the season, and everybody knows that, then there's no fighting, right? And then when
There's probably no fighting unless you're not taking steps to actually make that happen.
Oh, but
right.
You
have to state goals, and then you actually have to set your objectives or set your action plan, right, to meet those goals.
And planning, and I'm hoping that we can do planning
Yep.
and actually another show, because that's a whole nother set of things. We're touching on it now, but that's part of, you can't really put a good plan together unless you know
Yep.
what you're trying to accomplish. And all the vested parties around you, players, parents, bosses, fellow coaches, assistant coaches, everybody, you're all in sync on exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish this year. Look, we talked about it. Our goal is everybody has to do a layup before the season's over in a game. All right, if that's the standard, right? If that's our goal, that's victory. I don't care if we
The rule is you only get practice once a week. So
well, that might be right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I think that one of the things that I think is just so important in this discussion for me is everyone knows the rules as well, and some of those are your own, right? I mean, as you said, your ethics, what have you. But then it's also what are the rules that are put upon you. You better know that like that's where your limit is. You want to be this national power club but the resources only dictate you're going to be playing in the tri-state area, right? You're not going to be able to travel. You're not going to be able. So you got to hone your goals that actually match the reality.
Right, and that's absolutely right. That leads to another. But let me finish a thought on that, and I'll go back to the reality thing, right, if I may. And so, but if everybody knows the goal, and again, I'm going to youth sports again, youth basketball. I ended up there, I don't know, but I'm there. So if the goal is everybody can do a layup in a game before the season's over, that's the goal, and you only get one team practice a week, right? You can still ask each kid to go to the playground. And what do you want them to work on?
Yep.
Tell the dad, mom, whatever, right? What do you want them to work on? I want them to work on layup. Whatever that, I'm not even going to pretend, right? 3 dribbles or whatever along the side of the key or something, or whatever it is, right? You're the coach, I'm not, but you get my point, right?
Yeah.
So, but you tell them, this is your homework assignment.
But that gets into the kind of the planning and action.
But that's the planning and action. But
go
that's
back to reality. I want to hear the reality.
All right,
I want to hear setting goals in reality.
So reality too is, right, if you're a youth soccer team or a youth basketball team, right, and you're forming a team for the very first time, you can't say, yeah, we're going to beat every team in the tri-state area this year, right? That's just not reality. I mean, as much as I might want to play in the NBA, right, it's just like I could want that all day long. I could want that goal. It could be really important to me, all that kind of stuff, right? My vertical leap's like 6 inches. I'm not ever playing in the NBA. So you have to deal in reality, right? Now, I think there's way too many times in life, though, people take excuses and say that's reality. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, I'm saying you have to deal in reality. It's okay, right, to have it not be practical, right? To have it not be rational,
i.e.,
right?
that's swimming the English.
So like swimming the English Channel, right? Sorry, I'm bringing it up again, but actually you're kind of bringing. So in reality, I could never be an NBA player, but me going and saying I'm going to go swim the English Channel, I was in my 50s, or I was in just my young 50s. My wife just had a child, right? So I had a kid at home, and it made no sense, right? I'd never swim anywhere near that far. I told you in the last episode, it made no sense at all. So it was completely irrational, but it was really, really important. So it has to be real, right? For me to say I'm going to play in the NBA is not real. For me to think that I might swim in the English Channel, that's dealing in reality. Is it rational?
No.
No, it wasn't rational. But was it really, 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 really important to me? Yes. So your goal needs to. Jim Collins, this guy back in the 90s, business book writer, right? He wrote about big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And your goal, so when you said we want to go back to the tournament, it had been 25 years, that was a big, hairy, audacious goal. And everybody had to rally around it. Whether they all knew it or not, everybody had a part in that, right? The lacrosse team, everybody had a part in making that happen. And it was really a school-wide team, department-wide kind of thing. But that's a big, hairy, audacious goal. Again, and so you want the goal to be a challenge. You don't want the goal to be easy. Milestones are different, right? And we'll talk about that in the planning episode when we do that. Milestones should be steps, but the end thing should be a challenge, right? And so when I say everybody should be able to do a layup, right, and then 3/4 of the kids can already do layups, then maybe the goal should be everybody should do a layup and everybody can shoot a free throw in a game or something else, right? It should be bigger than what should be easy. It should be a big, hairy, audacious goal. So you look like you have a question now. No? Okay. So that's just really, that's a big deal in every goal you set. It has to be something that's so big that it captures everybody's attention. It has to be so clearly defined, it has to be precise and specific, right? So for you, right, we want to make the tournament the next 4 years, right? That was what Halo was. For me, I want to do the English Channel, right? And it was all the rules were defined, the time frame was defined because I had, they have these slots, and I won't get into all the details, but all those things are defined. If you say you're that youth basketball team and you want everybody to do a layup, it's defined because you have one season. Mm-hmm. So all that's clearly defined and specific. You know whether every kid got a layup in a game or not. You know it, right? There's no doubt whether that happened or not. So it has to be precise and specific. These goals of, we just want to win as many games as we can.
And that's what I think coaches fall into.
That's baloney.
Yeah.
That's just a total mistake. That's not enough.
Yeah, because I don't think they get specific enough.
Right.
And I think, I agree. I think it's great to have, I agree with a lot of coaches in the sense that it's great to have these goals that come up year to year and annual, and you include the members of the team and everyone buys in, et cetera. But I don't think there's enough thought behind it. It's same thing. We want to win 20 games. Well, of course we do. But I think it's everything behind that. It's the precision behind it that I think is, what are you doing, and what rules are you playing under that are going to, right. Define that.
Right.
So,
and that's what. Here's another example where it's in this again. I'm bringing up swimming, but not marathon swimming, so it's not me. But it's in track and field. It's in a lot of sports, right? It's like people want to win so bad that they cheat. They use drugs,
yep.
Right? I mean, they use something to enhance themselves and that are against the rules, right? So if you go into that and the goal is so important that you lose your moral compass, then that's not a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of what I mean by rules. Like you have to make decisions before the decision comes to you about what you're going to do. That's why, again, I would ask every coach to sit down, take a notebook, carry it around with them for a couple of weeks, and just jot down really what's important to them, mm-hmm. Short term, long term, or whatever, and then from those rules you can come up with a goal.
Yeah, and to put it in some coaches or sports talk, the non-negotiables. We all talk about it, right? What are the non-negotiables? I mean, that's basically your rules. I mean, what aren't you going to do, or what are you you have to do.
Right.
And whether it's looking for emotional skills, and it's like we are not recruiting a kid unless they're competitive. I mean, those non-negotiables are basically a lot of what we're talking about in what are the rules under which the goal is going to live, and that's just fact. Or it's like we want a halo, but we're not going to do it with student athletes who are just in and out. They're never going to go to class. They're never going to do any of that stuff. That's not part of
That's not who Drexel is.
That's not how we're going to do it.
Right.
So that's a rule, and I think those things are just really, again, so important to just identify. And then I think part of the process of the setting of the goals, a huge part is just that. Right? Because I think when you haven't figured out those rules that you're going to live under, your goals don't really make sense. Right.
So here's another example while you're talking. It hit me. So I know this great water polo coach. He's really good. But a couple seasons ago, he was just really frustrated with lots of stuff. Right? I don't need to get. And he yelled, like all season long. He just yelled. Right? He just yelled a ton at everybody about everything. Right? And so between seasons, he reflected, and he's like, I'm not going to yell. I'm going to teach. And the kids that respond to my teaching will get better, and the ones that don't won't. But I'm not going to yell. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm going to do. So he created his own rule, right? That's a rule, right? And guess what? The kids responded. Right. It was a different, slightly bad.
High E, right? I mean, he had self-reflection.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He deserves. He had totally high E, right? Took him a season to get there,
course.
but he reflected. He was one of those people that thought about who he was, thought about his own performance, and he wanted to be better, and he got better by deciding, I'm going to teach and not yell, right? And you can't. And with today's kids, in my opinion. Back when I was a kid, if you didn't get yelled at, it was like, coach just didn't see you, right? You know what I mean? Not that you were doing anything wrong. You just get yelled at to go harder no matter what you were doing, right? But in today's world, kids respond a lot better if they're being taught, right?
100%.
And, yelling at kids today, you're not, I know, this is a big thing about you.
I love getting yelled at.
They're not kids. What's that?
I loved getting yelled at.
You did, but again, you're not today's kid, right? But you're all about, right? You've talked about this a lot of times, and we'll probably talk in a future episode. But meeting the players where they are, and not trying to make them something they're not. And there's a lot of kids with a lot of drive that want to do great things and all that kind of stuff, but they don't respond to being yelled at. They just can't on today's world. And
I do like the fact that he set that rule on himself.
Right, but that's part of his goal. So when I say these goals, like I said, they're really hard to come by. They're really hard to do. And was it reality for him to not yell? Yeah, it actually was, because he did it. He accomplished it.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about what we talked about today, and in regards to setting goals. I mean, and I'll do my best, and you can fill in the intelligent answers. So setting goals and being precise, right?
Specific and precise. Yeah.
Specific and precise. Knowing the rules
Yep.
that you're working under. Having understanding. I mean, the rules can be time frame, so I was going to add time frame.
Right.
Make sure that they can be and they are clearly communicated, and then those goals will drive decisions.
Right.
Now keep going from there, because.
Well, so I would say the other thing is it really drives all communications, right? And it gets rid of a whole bunch of angst everywhere. Everybody is on the same page, and everybody can actually accomplish more if everybody understands the goal. But you have to have a goal stated first, right? It should be precise. It should be specific, right? And those are kind of slightly different things. And then you do need to have a time frame.
And measurable, is that fair?
Yeah, it should be measurable. So if you go back, again, I'm going back to my youth basketball team. It's measurable whether all 12 kids on that team did a layup during a game or not, right? That's really easily measurable. Your time frame is set. You have a 20-game 20-game season, right? And it's very specific. It's a layup. Every kid does a layup in a game. That's all right. So it has to be all those kinds of things. And then I would also add with emphasis, it has to be in reality. Your goal with youth basketball can't be, all 12 of my kids are going to be able to dunk the ball before the season's over. Right? That's just not real,
Yeah.
right?
Makes sense.
But then, especially when you're assigning the goal, and you're heavily involved, it's hard to project a big, audacious goal that's irrational on somebody else, but you can do it for yourself. All right. And so even if you're the head coach of a college football program and and you're whatever, you're not a perennial contender, and you say, you know what, I've got a great relationship with my AD. We're on the same page. I've got a great relationship. I've got a good contract. My plan is 5 years from now, 6 years from now, whatever it is to be a contender every year from then on. I'm going to start drawing from the best high schools in the area. I'm going to right. That's my goal, right? And I'm going to be in the championship game for our conference 5 years from now, right? That's pretty specific as a time frame. Now, if you don't hit it, right, are you any worse off? No, the program is better. You're better as a coach. Your players are better. Everybody's better. And then you roll it again. You say, you know what? I didn't do it in 5 years. I'm going to do it in 6. It's still a good goal. I'm going to do it in 6, right? But everybody's better off because of doing that. So specific, precise time frame, right? And make sure it's measurable. Make sure it's big enough to keep everybody's attention.
Great. It was fun setting goals.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. We want to hear from you with your questions and comments. You can find us at thenickanthonyshow.com and our social media handles, which you can find in our description.